This is the first of two screencasts about visualization of data in Mendix, that is, setting up charts. In order to show you how charts work, we need some data that we can chart. So in this screencast, we're going to go ahead and do that. And to do that, what we're going to do is add some ratings to the setup here. So I'm going to go ahead and move a few things around. Here we go, moving this. So in this setup right here, we have beer and we have style. We're going to add some ratings information. And while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and show a little bit about how you can use microflows to calculate values. So the first thing we're going to do is add a new ratings entity. We will call it rating. And the idea is that users would create ratings. I'm not going to show that right now. We're going to be doing more work with our user information. So right now, we're not going to track who, in a formal way, who created a rating. But we're going to have two things. We're going to have a score, the rating score, and that will be a decimal. And the default value, we'll have our ratings be 1 to 5. So we'll say the default is 1. That is, if you haven't rated it at all, it's 1. And we'll see a way, we could add some validation here, but to make sure it's between 1 and 5, but we're going to take care of that another way for now. The other thing we might do is when a user rates something, we might want to let them add some notes, or maybe we'll call it a review. Okay, and that's a string. Now, we have some additional data that is always available as attributes. So we can store the date the rating was created, and we can store who was logged into the system when they created it. We're going to see eventually in the future that if we want to actually connect that to data we have about our users, we're going to need to do that separately. But at least now we know which user record did that. Click OK. Now we want to link rating to the beer. So a beer has many ratings. If we want to make sure we understand how delete will work, we can say if a beer is deleted, we would want to delete all the rating objects. And if we delete a rating, we're going to keep the beer object. Okay, so we've got that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to allow users to add a rating to a beer. And the way we're going to do that is in our beer list. Right now, we have a details button, which would pop open details. We're going to add a button that allows us to add a rating. Okay, so in order to do that, we're going to need a rating page. And what we will do is we will add a new page. So we're not going to list ratings as a separate list of ratings of every beer. We're going to just list rating. We're just going to have the user add a rating for a beer. Okay, my first module, add page. So this will be a form. The form could be vertical. We'll call it new rating. The idea I have is that probably we're not going to let the user, for now we'll say that you can't edit the ratings, so we're not going to provide for that. And we'll say that this is a pop-up. Okay. So now we have this, and we want to, we'll see that this is a data view. We're going to double click. For the data source, it's going to be from context. We will know what beer to add the rating to, and we'll know we're going to create a new rating object for the user. That's all going to be done for us. So we set it at context. It's a rating. It's editable. We click OK. We'll automatically fill it in. So you'll notice here for rating that it says beer, and it lets you pick which beer. But we shouldn't have to do that because the user has already selected the beer when they click the rating button. So what we could do here is we could still show that information on the pop-up, but if we look here and we say editable, we can say this is never editable. Okay, so they'll see the beer, but it depends on where they clicked. So they can enter a score, they can enter a review. Good. So one thing we'd like to do here is instead of having them type in a score, we're going to go ahead and use star rating. So I'm going to get rid of score, and I'm going to drag star rating up here. And now if I double click on star rating, this will let me set the score by clicking on stars. The maximum number of stars is 5. Okay, so now the other thing is the review might be more than just a little bit of text. So instead of having the review be a text box, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do text area. And for text area, we will go ahead and say that is, and you'll see it's showing us other things that we could edit here, but we're going to make that the review. Okay, so we've got that all set up. Now the issue is we need to open this page. So to open this page, let's go back to beer list. Let's now add a microflow button. And the microflow is going to be a new one. Notice that I've selected my first module, so it'll be added here. And we could call it add review. Okay. And that's probably an okay title as well. And so now what we need to do, add review, we're going to go here to find add review. We're going to open it up. Notice that we're passed in which beer it is. Okay, so what we want to do is create a new review object. And so we're going to do create object. Okay, and the object we want to select is rating. Now we're going to do something a little different here. We said that we're going to set this review, this rating object, to be connected to the beer the user was clicking the button on. And we're not going to let the user do that. We're going to do that. So how do we actually make this link? How do we make sure that's set? We're going to add a new member here. And you see where it says my first module rating beer. We had our two basic attributes, but the attribute we want is the actual association. So we're adding the association, and what we want to do is we want to set this to be the beer. So we are actually setting the link. We're saying that this is linked to the beer that the user was clicking on. Okay, so we have the new rating. The next thing we want to do is we want to open up the rating page. So we go to show page. And by the way, notice here I did not commit this record. I haven't stored it in the database, and I haven't refreshed the client because I haven't shown a page. And the user may not save a rating, so I don't want to store a rating until they've saved it. Okay. So what I'm going to do for show page is we're going to pass our new rating to the new rating page. Click OK. And that should be all we need to do. And at this point, let's see what our error is. At least one allowed role must be selected. Okay, so this has to do with the fact that we've added a new microflow. So we got to go to security, and we want to allow everyone except a guest who isn't logged in to add a review. Okay, so that's good. However, we also want to be able to see the ratings once they've been added. So if we go to beer info, okay, a couple of things here. We're going to have a bunch of ratings that we're going to show for the beer. And if we're going to show those ratings, we probably don't want this to be a pop-up. So I'm going to go to properties, and good, this is not a pop-up. So this is the page that comes up when the user does the details button for beer. We're going to show all the reviews here. So to do that, and this is an interesting idea, we already have a data view. Inside the data view, we're going to add a list of beers. So we go to Toolbox, and we can make this actually a list view. There are various kinds of ways to show lists: a data grid, a template grid, a list view. We're going to do list view. We'll come right here under price. So if we look at this, if we double click, we can now do data source. And the data source should be association. That is, we're not going to pull up all the ratings. We're just showing the ones that are connected to our beer. So we do select. We see we want to bring up a list of all the rating objects. We can click select. Now we can click OK. Do we want to automatically fill the contents of the list view? Let's go ahead and do that. If we look here, we don't need to include the beer because that's already up above. We can include the review. For score, instead of score, let's go ahead and get rid of that, and let's use our stars. We'll go down to star rating, drag that up here, double click. The attribute is the score. Okay, so we've got that. So we're showing the star rating and the score. And notice we're not going to add any buttons to edit the ratings. We're just going to show them. Now, one small point is this is opening up and letting someone edit the beer. We might want a view that just shows them the beer and the ratings. We're not going to get into that right now. But let's just see if we can get that to work. So we're going to check for errors. No errors. We will save all. Shift Control S or save all. And we will run locally. And since we have not added rating to the nav menu, you might think, how are we going to get to it? But we added the buttons we need. Okay. The database has to be updated because we've added some new stuff. We can go to our runtime. Okay, so now we'll go in. I'll go in as the brewer, and I will look at the beers. And what I can do is, if I go, I can click add a review. I can say Bud Light, 2 stars, a bit watery. And see, we have Bud Light showing here, but I can't edit it. Click save. Why don't I add another review? 4 stars, great taste, less filling. Save. Okay. And now if we click details on Bud Light, we see the reviews. Excellent. Okay. So far so good. But in order to do a chart and also to demonstrate a cool thing we can do, I want to show you how to add some tabulations here. So we have our beer list, or rather, let's go back to our domain model. If you look in the domain model, in order for it would be good if for each beer we knew how many reviews had been posted and what the average review was. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create attributes for that. Now, we could store those attributes, but then we'd have to set up automatic calculations at various moments. But instead, what we'll do is basically these attributes will in effect be queries. So whenever you need this information, the query will run. So there'll be calculated values. Clearly, there could be a performance issue with that, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So we're going to add some attributes. So the first attribute we're going to add is called rating average. Okay, and the type of data, this is going to be a decimal. And rather than storing it, it's going to be calculated. So in order to calculate it, every time we need to access that attribute, we're going to have to run a microflow. So we'll select, we're going to add a new microflow, and we'll call this calc average rating. Okay. And we can show that. Click OK. Click OK. So here we're given a particular beer record and we want to calculate the average. So the way we would do this, and this is an interesting example of a microflow, is first we have to get all of the ratings. So we'll do a retrieve. And the retrieve will be by association. So we only want ratings that are associated with this beer. So we go rating beer, right? The beer is linked to rating. Okay, it's going to be a list of ratings. We click OK. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do an aggregation. So the aggregation here is, if we double click, we don't want the sum. The input is the rating list, so we want to take that rating list. We want to actually average. And what is it we want to average? We want to average the score. And we'll store it in a variable called average score. And then this microflow will return that value. So if you haven't seen this before, this is an example of where we return a number to be used somewhere else. And the number we want to do is average score. Okay, so Shift Control S to save. If I go back to my domain model, and now we have our rating average, let's also add a count of our ratings. So I'm going to do new. This will be rating count. This is going to be an integer. It's calculated. Microflow is going to be new calc. We could say count ratings. Okay, we're going to show this, and this will be very similar. We're going to retrieve by association all the ratings, store them in a list. We're then going to do an aggregate. And the aggregate in this case, the variable we use is the rating list. The function we use is count. Because we're counting, we don't have to say which attribute. We'll store it as a count. And then what we'll return is $count. Okay, so we've got that set up. Now what we can do, we're not going to show, well actually we could. Let's go to our beer list. Okay, and if we open that up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another bit of information. So we're going to go to Toolbox, and let's pull out our star rating. So I think you could also show the number of ratings. I think I'll just show the average rating. So what I can do is pull, oops, get that in the right spot, star rating, and we're going to say that that is going to show the rating average. Okay, and by doing that, we should be able to see the beer name and an average rating. We will, for right now, not show the count, but you could imagine we could add a text box or display to show the count as well. All right, so we've got that. Let's run this. and save our changes. So now we'll view what we have. Log in as the admin or the brewer. Go to our beers. And now we see an average for Bud Light. Rolling Rock, there's nothing yet. If we add a review and we say, okay, someone doesn't like Bud Light, then it's interesting that the number of stars didn't update. Let's see. Yep, now it updated. So it didn't automatically update. Actually, we could probably do that with a refresh, but for right now, I'm just showing this. So we have some data. We're not showing the counts, but we have them. And with this data about averages and counts, we can now create some charts. And we'll do that in the next screencast.